So good day, friends. This is Dr. Bob Hamilton, and you have tuned in today to the Hamilton Review, where kids and culture collide. Before we get into our podcast today, I want to say just a personal note to those of you in this community of Los Angeles who have gone through this fire. Many friends, many families in my practice are suffering, and our hearts and our prayers go out to you. Um, it's kind of hard to think about anything else, to be honest with you. But anyway, I just want everyone to know that, out there that this is kind of a time of mourning and reflection for a lot of us. My hope is that you're putting your life together. I know many of you are already out of the area. You're doing what you have to do to take care of your kids and your family, but God bless you. Our hearts are with you. That being said, I also want to say thank you for those who've tuned in. It means a lot to me that you do this on a weekly basis, and we appreciate your attendance at these little podcasts. And if you like what you hear, pass it on to your friends and your family, because the people that I bring on the show are worthy to be heard. And today is no exception. It's a great honor for me to welcome to the Hamilton Review today Dr. Chris Winter. He is a board certified sleep board certified physician. He is a internationally recognized sleep medicine specialist. He's also a board certified neurologist. He's in private practice. He lives actually in Florida, but he's all over the place. He's online, and he has written a book called The Sleep Solution. The subtitle is Why Your Sleep is Broken and How to Fix It. Chris, is such an honor to have you here today on the Hamilton Review.
Well, it's an honor to be here, and I appreciate your time and your platform. Really do.
So thank you. Chris, I'm going to I'm going to ask you to tell a little bit about your background, but I will tell you that sleep is such an important issue, especially for moms, new moms who've had babies. They are classically sleep deprived in a big way, fathers too, to a degree, but mothers in particular, because they obviously, many of them are breastfeeding and they carry the load in many ways. But before we get into that and talking about the details of that, we'd like to, on this podcast, I'd like to have you as my guest talk about yourself, a little bit about who you are, your background, where you grew up, and maybe a little bit of reasoning for why you ended up in the field of sleep medicine. So I'm going to turn the microphone over to you and let you go at it.
Yeah, well, that's a fun place to start. The short answer is accidental. I grew up in a small town in Southwest Virginia. Both of my parents came from um, sort of I don't say poor, just they came from West Virginia. They were the first in both of their families to go to college. So I think a big part of why I'm here is at some point when I was very young, I think I started saying to them that I wanted to be a doctor, and that got a lot of positive response from my grandparents. And so as much as I would like to say it was destined to be, I feel like I might have said I want to be a pastry chef and nobody cared, and I want to be a EMS worker and nobody cared. But as soon as I said I want to be a doctor, I think my grandparents started pulling out $2 bills and caramel candies, and there was this feedback loop that got established that suddenly I arrive at the University of Virginia as an undergrad telling people that I'm going to be a doctor, knowing nothing about really what that means. Both my parents were school teachers. I didn't have medicine in my family. It just seemed to be what you were supposed to do if you made good grades. I don't know. I think about it a lot. But anyway, I had a wonderful biology advisor, and he said, well, there are doctors at the University of Virginia Healthcare Center, the hospital, that look for undergrads to help them with research. And he gave me this binder. And I remember looking through it thinking, I've made a big mistake. This looks deathly boring. I don't like any of this. And I turned a page, and there was this, kind of an ad for I need help with some sleep research. And it was so interesting to me as a young person. like sleep's part of medicine. I had no idea. Like I, didn't, I was thought it was going to be like taking somebody's gallbladder out or something like that was going to be the research. No, it was running a gel electrophoresis or looking at rat brains under a microscope. So I met with this guy named Paul Surratt who ran the sleep center at the University of Virginia. He was a pulmonologist, and just quickly he became this very important person to me. Not only a mentor with this research and but just a kind of a second father figure, like he's been through it all and seen it all. And as much as my parents were helpful and pushed me to achieve scholastically, they can't really tell you what it's like to be a doctor. So long story short, I started doing the sleep research with him, went to medical school at Emory. He got me hooked up to work in the research lab of Don Blywise, who was a sleep doctor down there, and Dave Rye, and ended up doing a sleep fellowship at Chapel Hill with Brad Vaughn. So, I'm here kind of accidentally, but I'm here because of mentors. Did these people who just took an interest in me and helped me see, what a great community sleep is. And I had all these opportunities along the way to leave, but I love it. So it's fun to be a 52-year-old who can tell people I've been doing this for 30 years, in some form or fashion. I think I was doing sleep before I could legally buy alcohol, but it's great. And it's just, I get to, see patients, which is a wonderful thing, both adults and kids. And I've written a couple books. The one you mentioned, that I wrote a book about sleep in children called The Rested Child. I work for the LA Dodgers, who just won the World Series. So it's just, sleep's fun. Like it's a fun thing to talk about. We're going to have a great time. So I really
Hold on, Chris. Are
welcome
you, are
this.
you you're a kid from West Virginia. Are you taking credit for the LA Dodgers winning the, is
So
that what you're
a couple quick things here. I take all credit for teams that I work for that win and assume no liability for the teams I work for who don't win. And there's plenty of those too. I am actually born and bred in Southwest, Virginia. My parents were from South, West Virginia. So just differentiating that. I was born in Roanoke, Virginia, but yes, my roots are in West Virginia. And yeah, I'll take credit for in anything that I can take credit. Prove me wrong.
So I want you to say that I have a dear friend of mine who's actually a pastor back there in Charleston, West Virginia. And
Ooh.
he's an avid Dodger fan. Bill, you know who I'm talking about. And so there's at least two of you back there in that country who are Dodger fans.
Well, I
So
was a Dodger fan growing up. I don't follow sports the way I used to when I was little, but I was a Dodger fan growing up because of my grandfather who lived in Charleston, West Virginia, worked for Union Carbide, and he was a big Brooklyn Dodger fan, loved Pee Wee Reese for some reason, and that's the reason why the Dodger, thing got implanted in me. So to be able to grow up and work for them is kind of crazy.
amazing. Yeah. Well, I don't think there any professional baseball teams in West Virginia. No,
No,
for the
nor
idea.
do I think there ever will be. I don't even think there's minor league teams in West Virginia, to my knowledge. I could be wrong about that. Like the
You think you're wrong about that?
AAA for the LA Dodgers are in Oklahoma City, and I don't think so. So yeah, there's
Well,
no professional teams in Virginia either.
you have a lot of latitude to go where you want to go. So you're going with the
That's
winner.
right. That's right. You just go with the winners. That's why in growing up, I was so enamored by the Pittsburgh Steelers because they just seem to be always winning. Mean Joe Green on the Coca-Cola commercial. Let me
Okay,
date
let me get back
myself a
to
little bit
sleep.
more here.
So you've been in the sleep business for a long time. Most of your life actually.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so you wrote this book called The Sleep Solution. Uh, why did you write the book?
You know, I got to a point in my career where I was talking to patients about certain things related to sleep, and I just wanted to chronicle it. So I travel a lot. So when I would sit in an airport at my gate waiting for my plane to board, I would just open up a Word document and just start writing down my thoughts about sleep and insomnia and various, other disorders under that umbrella. And I never did anything with it. And very quickly, the document became massive. And one day, a guy called me up in my office and said, I think you should write a book. And I said, I think I already have. And he was very apologetic. He said, I'm sorry, I didn't come across it when I was looking for it. I said, oh, you wouldn't have because it's on my computer. I don't show it to anybody. And he said, well, send it to me. So I sent him this massive document and he sold it to Penguin.
Wow.
So, but the only
Yeah.
thing was they said it's too big. You got to cut some stuff out. So I cut all the pediatric stuff out. That eventually became the Rested Child. And the biggest mistake of my professional career was I cut out anything related to menopause because I thought I'm not a great expert in this field. Does anybody want to hear about menopause from a middle-aged white man? So I just was like, no, let's take that out. Somebody can do it better than I'll do it. And I swear to God, so many people say, oh, I'm going to get your book. Do you talk about menopause? I'm like, no. So whatever sales I've had of this book would have been doubled had I not listened to my editor and said, look, I got to fight to keep the menopause in there. So anyway,
Well, it's another book. So
it's
you
another book. Yeah, like I said, I'll let somebody else better than me write it. But it's a big deal. It really
so
is.
in the pediatric world, there are a couple of areas that I talk about sleeping. Number one, obviously with newborns, I'm very clear about that. About 4 or 5 months of age, you really should be getting kids into some kind of a cycle, and then usually kids sleep pretty well until they're teenagers, and then I kind of go into I have a whole another thing, but going back to the kids, the newborn kids, can you tell us the chapter? And I haven't read your other book. Sorry, I'll have to get
It's
that book.
okay.
I'll bite you back. But tell us a little bit about newborn babies and your take on their sleeping patterns and why it's important to get them into some kind of a cycle.
Yeah. So it's interesting you said that. So I think you and I are aligned on that. It was interesting when my book came out, the Rested Child, the one about children, I feel the same way you do. When I would go through a checkout line, my kids would reach for candy bars. Just because they reached for the candy bar doesn't mean I bought it. My kids didn't want to sit in their car seat. It didn't matter to me. You're going to be in a car seat and wear a seatbelt. So there's just certain things you're going to do, even if your kids don't like it. To me, every parent is going to make a decision about how they raise their child, what they do with sleep, etc. Great. That is your prerogative as a parent to do that. Having said that, if you're asking me how many people come into my clinic saying, look, our kids are really organized sleepers, they've got a great schedule, how can we get them off of that schedule where they're just sleeping in a disorganized fashion? That's a big zero. It's always the opposite. Our kids are
Yeah.
disorganized, they're all over the place. Please help us. So if you want your child to eat whenever he wants to eat, sleep whenever they want to sleep, go to school if they feel like it, great. Again, your child, your life. But, to me, there's no greater gift you can give a kid than the ability to settle themselves, sleep on a predictable schedule. And frankly, there's no better gift you can give yourself. You got to get some work done and catch up on your emails and put some groceries away and do whatever you need to do. So I think, raising kids is hard. I've raised three of them and I did an okay job, I guess. My wife gets all the credit there. But I can't imagine them not being sort of organized, predictable sleepers. I think, I've never quite understood that argument. So yeah, I believe that, if you're saying, look, what do you think? I would say, I think you'd be doing yourself and your child a favor to get them some sort of structure when it comes to their sleep. Like,
Yeah.
or listen, I'm a neurologist. Brains love structure. They love a schedule. There's nothing our brain does accidentally. We release hormones, digestive enzymes, our heartbeat, our menstrual cycle. Everything has a predictable pattern. Why would you not put, exercise and sleep and eating in that predictable framework? Because our bodies work better when we have that kind of predictable schedule. That's a reason why shift work is considered a carcinogen now.
Yeah.
You're a healthy person, but you work different shifts all over the place. That's hard for your body and it's hard for a child.
Very true. Um, I No, I'll tell you why people don't do the training is because they don't like to hear a baby cry, and I understand that. I mean, it's very stressful to hear your child crying, and certainly if you're letting them cry in their crib for for several minutes at a time sometimes. I mean, there are different techniques of learning, of teaching children how to go to sleep. But it usually for babies, it usually does involve a little bit of crying, and that, and basically that they learn how to self soothe, and that's the essence of sleep training, really. I
Yeah.
just have people who never have refused to go along with that, and they pay a dear price because I had one famously one mother came in to me, older kid. The kid was 8 years of age, and I didn't. There were a new patient. I said, "Why are you here?" And she said, "My child doesn't sleep." And I go, "Well, he certainly has sleep, some sleep. I mean, come on." He goes, "Well, he doesn't sleep alone. He needs to be in my bed every night to fall asleep." And I looked at her, I literally said, "You know what?" I mean, after talking to her for a while, I said, "Why don't you just get him out of your bed?" "No, he can't do that." And I said, "You know what? I don't do this very often, but I just looked at her and said, I don't think I can help you. I think he's I don't know if I use this word broken, but he really was broken beyond my ability to repair him. And but I don't understand people who do not actively get their children on a schedule relatively early on. What is your take in terms of age of doing that? Do you have any particular age for babies?
Yeah, not really. I think the baby kind of I mean, I use the term guerrilla sleep, like a guerrilla warfare. Like the first, when you first get the baby home, you can have a plan and you should, but it's kind of survival at that
Yeah.
point. But I think you need to be thinking about that schedule and also kind of looking at what your baby seems to be requiring. When are the feedings good? When are they not so good? Can you kind of start to organize something? And coming up with a plan and figuring out it's not quite right and needs to be tweaked is perfectly fine.
Right.
So to me, the planning of it starts immediately. If so, and you have to be very careful. Yes, your friend had a baby and your friend's baby got on this schedule and it worked wonderfully. That's awesome. But kids are so different in terms of sleep need, and that those error bars, that span of what is normal in newborns in 1 month and 2 month is really dramatic from one child to the next. So taking your friend's plan or the celebrity who wrote the book about sleep training and using that as a template's fine, but just understand that your child is a unique entity and can have very different needs in terms of sleep and diet and so just that kind of flexibility. But yeah, I mean, I think that 8-year-old is not uncommon that you talked about. And
Oh,
can they sleep without you? Of course they can.
yeah.
Is it going to be you're going to pay the price somewhere, and I agree with you. I'm glad you brought up the fact that there's not training and then there's training, and there can be gentle trainings. Like the cry it out doesn't have to be 45 minutes of your kids screaming. It can be walk out of the room, and when they start crying, you go in after 10 seconds. And the next time you go in after 15. I mean, you can make it what you want. I would never say don't soothe your kid or be there. You want them to know you're going to be there for them, but they wanted the candy bar. And when you told them no, they started crying. You didn't, I mean, did you buy them the candy bar just because they cried? Did you let them get out of their car seat because they cried? No. So
Yeah.
sometimes a little bit of discomfort is going to be okay. And it's going to be a whole lot better than the 8-year-old discomfort you're going to run into in a few years when you don't
Good luck with
allow
that.
them to develop this skill.
Yeah. The word I like to use is nudge, and you said it
Oh,
perfectly.
great word.
Yeah,
Great
you
word.
nudge them into a schedule, and I think that you're with your child all the time early on, and you are trying to survive, but you can kind of see it's normal for human beings to want to fall into a pattern. And
Yes.
if you're observant and you're watching, you'll actually see the pattern.
Mhm.
And human beings, we typically also fall into a natural circadian rhythm, which is we're up during the day, we're awake, we're functioning, and then we sleep at night. Obviously, these are babies, they're feeding a lot, they need to feed a lot, but you can actually, if you're observant, you'll see their natural patterns coming out as well. Okay, that's the baby thing. then I do talk about kids when they get to be teenagers and they're horsing around at night, they're watching TV, they're playing video games, they're on their computers doing homework, they're getting all this blue light, in their eyes. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts about teenagers. First of all, how much sleep do you recommend that, say, 13, 14 teenagers, that those teenagers, how much sleep is a good amount of sleep for a teenager, number one? And what are some of your recommendations in terms of getting these kids to bed?
Tough. This is all really very difficult. And as a parent of kids that kind of spanned that from my oldest, who there really wasn't that kind of technology in her life, to my youngest, where he very much was. I think it's the hardest thing about rearing kids today. I mean, I'm not a parent expert, but in terms of Chris, what was the hardest thing about rearing your own kids? Even though I'm supposedly some sleep expert, I thought that whole situation was very difficult. When I was growing up, your dad took away the cord to the Atari or whatever thing you played, and that was it. Now it's so integrated into a child's life. Like their homework is on the computer, their social outlets are on the computer. Dad, if you take away my phone, I can't communicate with my baseball team or the club that I'm the president for. So that ability to separate a kid from technology is really difficult, I think, for parents. So, we always had the rule in our family where phones slept in the kitchen, meaning that we really worked hard to make the bedrooms a place where there weren't screens.
Yeah.
And again, when you work as a sort of a pediatric adjacent sleep person, you're always kind of dancing around this line of medical professional parent advice, and but I always felt like there's no reason for these screens to be in a kid's room. I mean, as a neurologist, I think about a cell phone in a child as being a drug, and I'm not trying to be hyperbolic about that. It's manipulating neurotransmitters in a brain just like drugs do. It's creating dopaminergic surges and addiction. One of my kids made a phone out of wood, colored it black, put it in an iPhone case, and every night he would plug that in and fool me. And he had his phone up in his bedroom. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The greatest thing was when we figured it out, my wife said, "Don't tell him." And when he went on a field trip to Washington, D.C. with all of his friends, right before he got on the bus to go to D.C., we took his real phone out and put the wooden phone in. And we've never spoken about it ever. He's a junior in college now, but we've never talked about that. So, I mean, I think that it drives kids to behave in ways that they wouldn't ordinarily because they've got to have that connection. Even if they're looking at positive things on the phone, like research and researching their favorite weather patterns and presidential history, it's still a strong drive for them. So I think creating disconnect at times in their life away from these things is incredibly essential because it is probably the number one thing that's getting in between your child and healthy sleep. That in school, but school's kind of tough.
Yeah, and I'll throw in there one more thing, sports, because sometimes
Yeah.
these kids are being required. I mean, honestly, here in LA, we have kids who have practice at 6 o'clock in the morning. I mean, some, swimming and some of the like the
Yep.
row, these guys are out in the ocean rowing or in the marina, and they got to be there at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. I mean, you got to get up early for that, and so they're not getting a full night. And if they're good students, they're carrying a heavy load. I mean,
100%.
they really are burning the candle from both ends. Okay,
Yep. I had a swimmer. It was
yeah,
awful.
yeah, no, it's really I listen to these stories of the parents and I kind of go, I don't have a solution. There's
You
no right
don't.
in the day.
And there's
Yeah,
no such thing as 50%. Do you know what I mean? Like, well, go to swim team late or only go every other practice. Those mid-level sport arrangements don't seem to exist anymore. And I mean, on the one hand, this got my son into a college he would never have gone to, but at the same time, what is the price we're paying here? Of course, it got him into the Naval Academy, which did not help his sleep at all. Like, pick the one academic institution that will take your sleep from bad swimming to even worse, and he was successful at that. But anyway, yeah, the sport thing is a problem.
No kidding. So tell us, okay, your recommendations. I like the term sleep hygiene. I think that is what we want to do. And there are some things. Listen, I covet sleep. When I was younger, in my training, of course, you did your training, and we were famously up. We were on call, which meant we were available throughout the night. I would literally stumble out of the hospital the following day. Honestly, I was literally out of my mind. Very paranoid, by the way. I got very weird and paranoid in some of those days. But I now covet my sleep, and there are certain things I do. But I'm curious, what are the recommendations for you? And this goes for both, kids and even adults as well, that you recommend in terms of how do you do your best to ensure a good night of sleep?
It's interesting. I invite your listeners to look up Peter Tripp, Tripp. He was a radio DJ, I believe, in the 50s, who famously performed a sleep deprivation stunt, not unlike we went through in our medical residency. And paranoia was a huge problem for him even after the stunt was over. So that's really interesting that you mentioned that. My claim to fame was I was the last generation of residents where there were no call restrictions. So as I left, they instituted those duty hours, and yeah, I was a threat to people at times during my residency, which is counterintuitive as a doctor. But so sleep, sleep hygiene. One of the things I tell people about is, besides, no TVs and things like that in your bedroom. I think that, creating a bedroom that is comfortable and dark and quiet and cool and all those things are really, really important. And there's so much cool stuff now that we can use. If you're a parent and you've got kids that you worry about their sleep, you can buy light bulbs that have no blue green in them. And you can just install them in your kids' bedroom. So when they're up in their bedrooms doing their homework, the lighting there is to some degree pushing them more towards sleep rather than wakefulness. So there's all kinds of subtle little things you can do, like that. Smart thermostats that start lowering temperature as we get ready to go to bed. If you have a child that is very difficult to wake up in the morning, they've got little lights that you can put on, like wear them like glasses, and they use that blue light to kind of wake you up. So I don't like to vilify blue light or bright light. It's just bad when you're getting ready to go to bed. It's a wonderful thing when you wake up. But if you're waking up early, like you said, the swimmer has got to get up at 4:45 to be in the pool at 5. Those can be wonderful things that they can use to kind of help them feel more awake. I like a schedule. It's very difficult to have a schedule when you're a young person, particularly when you're in school and playing all these sports. But trying to have a schedule, I think, is really important. There was an interesting study, I think it was done in Switzerland, that basically said, we talk a lot about sleep debt. And what about a kid who has to get up early and swim, 6 days a week? On Sunday, should they get up early? Should they sleep in to try to make up? Can you even make up sleep? And this study basically said we can, but it has to be relatively short term. So one of the sleep hygiene little things that I like to give teenagers is maybe don't think about yourself needing 7, 8, 9 hours of sleep, which is the typical range for a teenager, but more like not 8 hours a day, but maybe 56 hours a week. That's what I need you to get, which I think frees them a lot from anxiety of, okay, well, you had a late soccer game that you didn't even get home until late. You had to study a little bit, so you ended up getting 5 hours of sleep, and then you went to school. Take a nap when you get home from school that day. Maybe go to bed a little bit early or sleeping a little bit on Saturday. That if you can repay that debt within 7 days, like a credit card, no finance charges, no interest, no penalty. Now, the sleep debt that we incurred in residency, you and I cannot repay that. Whatever harm came to our bodies because of what we were doing to ourselves is lost and gone forever. But I do like the idea of trying to talk to people, and especially kids, saying, look, life's going to happen. You're going to go to college and you're going to do all these great things, and things are going to get in the way of your sleep. Just like things get in the way of a meal. Like I didn't have time to eat lunch today because my clinic was so packed or whatever. but
Yeah.
we have the capacity to make up for that within a relatively short period of time. So I think trying to tell a child or a teenager get 9 hours of sleep every night is it's a fool's errand. But
Yeah.
trying to give them realistic ways that you can think about, hey, if you can't get it on Tuesday, can you get it on Wednesday or Thursday when your life isn't so crazy? Like trying to elevate it. And I've grown as I've gotten older to think about the ideal amount of sleep and then the place where the child is at. And I'll deal with the midway point. I'm happy with that. Like maybe you're getting 5.5 hours a night on average. Maybe I can't get you to 9, but I'd be super happy with 7.5. And
Yeah.
a lot of times it's reinforcing because they feel so much better and their grades are so much better and their mood is so much better that they'll push it later for you. So to me, it's like, let's get an hour of extra sleep and see how you feel. A lot of times that's a lot more motivating and achievable than some doctor telling me to sleep 3 more hours than I really have the capacity to do. You need it. They have to believe in it and find it themselves, I think sometimes.
Yeah. No, I think you have to the ratchet method. You just kind of, you're slowly ratcheting
Or
it
your
up.
nudge. I like the word you
That's,
nudge
yeah.
them, and the next time you see them, nudge them a little bit more and talk to them about the way it's making them feel. I mean, we have a lot of kids out there with attention problems and mood problems that are really actually sleep problems.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. Tell us a little bit about just the physiology of sleep, because I think this is something that, people, I think they kind of know some of these words, but can you just talk a little bit about the idea of during the progression during the day of adenosine, for example? That I
Yeah.
think is interesting. So adenosine is the what protein, is that a protein? I think it is a protein
Yeah.
that is sleep inducing. So tell us a little bit about adenosine and how this progresses during the day.
Yeah, so as your child is out there playing on their travel soccer team, they are manipulating and utilizing the food energy that they've consumed during the day to create kinetic energy, run and kick the ball and do all these things. And we know about this because that's the conversion of the food energy ATP in our body to create our, all the things that we do in our life. The byproduct of that conversion in the mitochondria of the ATP is a byproduct called adenosine. So as we are physically active and mentally active during the day, we are constantly creating and accumulating adenosine, which has the effect of making us seek sleep. So the longer we are awake, the more we're accumulating adenosine. I'm accumulating it now, you're accumulating it, everybody who's listening is accumulating this, and it eventually gets to the point where we sleep, the adenosine goes away, and we start all over again the next day. So if it were just for adenosine, we'd all sleep about 7, 8, 9 hours, but we would be all over the place on a 24-hour clock. And we
Yeah.
would be constantly changing. So the other chemical that's really important for sleep is melatonin. Melatonin isn't really a sleep aid as much as it is a timing aid. It
Okay.
is trying to align us all so we're awake during the day and asleep at night because melatonin is very much suppressed by sunlight and enhanced by darkness. And people take melatonin to help them sleep. I got a lot of thoughts about that. But anyway, so those are the chemicals that we typically use to kind of create that sleep schedule. And kids like to be, they like to stay up late and get up late, and elderly people like to go to bed early and get up early. And so there are natural ebbs and flows in terms of the timing of our sleep. But what we're trying to do as sleep professionals is how can we support and enhance that adenosine production, and exercise is a great way to do it, scheduling and making sure we lead our lives a proper way, get good nutrition. And then the melatonin side has a lot to do with light, outdoor exposure during the day, working in environments that are bright and well lit. And then the evening after dinner, lights go down, screens go down, dimmer lighting. So we're trying to create that environment as if we were all living outdoors and camping and kind of at the mercy of rising and falling environmental temperatures, rising and falling environmental light. That's what we respond best to.
Yeah. I mean, it all makes sense, doesn't it? It really does.
Yeah. And you
The
feel it, and you feel it when you go camping. I will absolutely, you've got all these plans for what you're going to do, and you roast your hot dogs over the fire, but as the sun goes down and it's getting colder, you're like, wow, I'm ready to go to bed. And you're like, it's 8:15 and you're ready to get in the tent and go to bed. You're like, what is going on here? It's like, wow, there you go. You're responding to the environment like we were sort of intended to respond. But anyway,
so
we
you,
have light bulbs and we have to deal with that.
yeah, no, I know. I'm not sure we can ever forgive Edison for what he did.
That's right. That's right.
The you talk about this thing called the glymphatic circulation, and I think that this is very important because during the night, it isn't like your brain like goes away. I mean, it isn't like it just turns off like a light switch. And you mentioned this in your book. There's work going on, and that circulation system called the glymphatic, which I love that word, circulation is happening, uh, and is cleaning up all of the day the metabolites which have accumulated, adenosine being one of them, of course, and but it takes a while to get that done. Tell us a little bit about that process because it isn't like your brain turns off at night.
Absolutely not. There's several things that I really work hard to correct and educate my patients about. The first one is, like you said, my 8-year-old doesn't sleep. Of course he sleeps. It's impossible not to sleep. There is no such thing as a person who doesn't sleep. That doesn't exist in nature. So let's
Right.
reframe what we're talking about. Your son doesn't sleep when you want him to sleep. He has trouble settling without me being in bed with him, whatever. The other one is that I just can't shut my brain off at night. Nobody shuts their brain off at night. You may be in and out of consciousness, but your brain is very active during the night. The only time your brain shut off is when you're dead. So the glymphatic system is really interesting. When I was in medical school, not that long ago, although other people would argue that, I remember the lecture when they said, I remember it. It's so stuck in my brain because the lecturer said, "But our brains do not have a lymphatic system." And I remember thinking, the most important organ in your body doesn't have a system for getting rid of metabolic waste. That's crazy. Well, it turns out it did. It just took a woman to figure it out. A woman named Nettergaard discovered it. She was a researcher, I believe, in Maryland. And she said, yeah, it's very delicate and hard to find on dissection, but she discovered it and she named it the glymphatic system. And what's interesting about the glymphatic system, there's a lot of things that are interesting about it. One is the main thing that's getting rid of in the brain is a protein called beta amyloid, which is the protein that accumulates in Alzheimer's disease. I just saw a New York Times article yesterday that said, basically, brace yourself. The next generation is going to have a tremendous amount of dementia.
Mm.
So that it's like a bilge pump. It's pumping out this protein that accumulates in the neurofibrillary plaques and tangles of Alzheimer's disease. But the other thing that's really fascinating about it is that it's like 10 to 15 times more active when we sleep than when we're awake. So we've always known that people who have sleep disorders tend to have more dementia.
Right.
We never knew why until now. This is kind of the theory that, oh, well, there you go. It's because you stay up until midnight, managing your stock portfolio, and you want to be up at 4 o'clock in the morning and run your 2 miles and be there when the market's open. You're only getting 4 hours of sleep all of your life. Well, you're only engaging that bilge pump to pump out protein 4 hours a night versus your friend across the street who's getting 8 hours of sleep a night and getting all that. So it makes sense when you start to think about it. So it's yet another reason why, we really encourage people that if you're, value your health, if you're a young person and you really want to be the next, LeBron James or Tom Brady, if you're really serious about your performance and your health and you're not getting adequate sleep, why bother?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like you're shooting a gun that has no bullets in it, essentially. So it's really interesting to look at these connections. And there was a great study that showed that even in people who possess the genetic tendency to have Alzheimer's disease, could manipulate their chances of manifesting that disorder through sleep, which is so heartening that even if you have the genes for something, Alzheimer's runs in your family, you're not out of control of the situation.
Yeah, that's actually encouraging. It really is because I think a lot of people look at that and wonder about that. By the way, LeBron James is famous for his sleeping. You know that? I mean,
Absolutely. You
yeah,
bet.
Yeah, I know you love the Dodgers, but you love the Lakers as well, or not? I don't know if you love the Lakers.
I always grew up. I do not work for the Lakers. I work for some NBA teams, not LA, but I've got a good friend who used to work for a team I work for who now works for the Lakers. And I kind of grew up a Lakers fan. I think when you're little, you just gravitate towards people who win. And so I didn't like the Celtics, love the Lakers, and I love that HBO show Winning Time. I thought that was just so much fun. But anyway, yeah, I'm partial to the Lakers for sure.
So, but he's a good example to all these kids who, he really is.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely. I love the
have,
fact that he talks about sleep. He'll do more for sleep than I'll do in 10 lifetimes. Just
no,
his
one,
one
one,
tweet. I think sleep's great.
yeah, one little interview will take care of it.
That's right.
You mentioned something, I didn't know this, that apparently sleeping on your side, the glymphatic system is more effective when people sleep on the side. That to me was I don't get that one. Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, well, this generally speaking, sleeping on your side has only ever really been thought to be important in pregnancy. That the venous return and whatnot in a pregnant woman,
Yeah,
the sleeping on your side and lymphatic system, I think there was a study that suggested it might be helpful in rats or mice. It's never really been shown in people. To me, I think the biggest reason probably to sleep on your side if you're an adult is you tend to have less breathing disturbances and sleep apnea sleeping on your side than sleeping flat on your back. So if you're somebody sleeping on your stomach, I think you're probably okay.
okay. I mean, I was very happy because I actually sleep on my side. So I was going, yay, I'm winning on this one anyway. So, well, listen, I'm watching our time, and I made a promise to you very early on that we would get you out of here within an hour or so. So we're gonna finish up here. But Chris, I want you to know, Dr. Winter, you have been a tremendous guest on my show here, and I hope that those of you out there listening have been able to. um grab a couple pieces of information you can put to use. Sleeping, I guess the bottom line is sleep is really important. And the earlier that you begin to get into a cycle, the earlier you really covet your sleep and take care of yourself in that regard, the better off you are. Is that true, Doc?
Absolutely. And you don't have to be perfect. I think that, when I work with a sports organization or talk to parents, I just encourage people to talk about sleep. How did you sleep last night? How did you feel about it? Be encouraging. When your child says, I had trouble sleeping last night, that's the norm. Like if I meet somebody who's 62 years old and says, I've never had trouble falling asleep my entire life, that would be startling to me versus we're always going to have periods of stress and so it's important to listen and tell people, look, your kids, it's impossible not to sleep, so resting has been shown to be extremely valuable. So sitting there while you're waiting to fall asleep and thinking about the words on your spelling test or presents you want to get your parents for their birthday or your dream vacation or imagining yourself in a science fiction movie. We always encourage parents to, talk to their kids about, sleep and what it means to not have, fall asleep right away and that that's perfectly normal. Have a little plan for it. And, we have a lot of influence when it comes to it. But yeah, I think, trying to help your kids sort sleep out and understand that, it sometimes goes sideways and that's okay is really important. We don't want people to have a lot of stress around sleep.
Yeah,
Eat your food, try to eat healthy, get your exercise, get your sleep, and it's going to be okay.
I love it. Well, Dr. Winter, thank you for being here today in the Hamilton Review. For those of you listening, I thank you for tuning in and listening today. I appreciate all you guys. And until next time, be well. Bye bye.
You have been listening to the Hamilton Review, where kids and culture collide. Thank you for allowing us to be a part of your day. Tune in again next week on Apple Podcast. Rate and comment and tell a friend.